Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something pretty heavy, actually. It's a critical look at the NIH's Autism Data Science Initiative, the ADSI.
That's right. And the analysis we're drawing from is, well, it's sharp. It doesn't pull punches.
No, it really doesn't. The central argument hits you right away. It basically says, to know the cause is to make it optional. Wow.
Yeah, that line is sort of the Rosetta Stone for this critique. We're diving into how this analysis reads the ADSI not just as science policy, but almost as a philosophical document about power.
A blueprint for control, it suggests.
Exactly. The argument is that this massive push to find the biological cause of autism, even though it's presented as, helping people, as mercy, it might actually be laying the groundwork for deciding who gets to exist, planning the disappearance of difference.
Okay, that's a huge claim. Before we really unpack that, let's just clarify for everyone listening. The ADSI itself, what is it actually doing on a practical scientific level? It's a big NIH thing, right?
Oh, it's massive, federally funded. The main goal is using AI, machine learning, to integrate enormous data sets. We're talking genomics, brain imaging, behavior scores, health records, everything.
All pulled together.
Right. To find patterns, predictive biomarkers, and, the underlying biology. The stated aim is meaning from magnitude. And reducing autism-associated suffering.
Okay, see, on the surface, meaning from magnitude, reducing suffering, that sounds positive, necessary even. So where does this critique find the darker element, the dream of an emptied future? What language tips them off?
Well, it's less about specific evil words and more about reading the intention embedded in the whole structure. The source we're looking at frames the ADSI almost like scripture for a religion of correlation.
A religion of correlation?
Yeah. Data is the god. Finding correlations is the ritual, the liturgy. And the ultimate aim isn't just understanding. The analysis calls it exorcism through research design.
Exorcism. Strong.
It is. The implied prayer, according to this critique, is something like, let's refine the model so perfectly that no one deviant from it needs to be born.
I have to push back slightly, or at least question it. Is framing a data science initiative as quasi-religious, maybe? Overly provocative? Is it fair?
It's provocative, for sure. But the analysis argues it is fair because the focus is on power dynamics, not necessarily the personal motives of the scientists involved. It argues that institutional harm often starts benignly with a kind of translation.
Translation?
Yeah, translating horror into hygiene, as the source puts it. Taking something potentially awful and making it sound clean, technical, bureaucratic. That's where we need to look at the language really closely, this idea of linguistic laundering.
Okay, linguistic laundering. Let's unpack that. What's the concrete evidence in the ADSI language or similar documents?
Well, think about historical shifts. Eugenicists in the past might have used brutal terms like life unworthy of life. Today, you don't see that crude language. Instead, you get these sanitized bureaucratic phrases like burden reduction. The critique argues that the ethical endpoint can be the same even if the words sound kinder, the intent coded into policy.
And that phrase, burden reduction. The analysis highlights that the burden is never placed on society's inflexibility, is it? It's implicitly placed on the individual whose difference creates the burden.
Always. It's never about changing the structure to accommodate. It's about preventing the person who requires accommodation from existing. That's the subtle violence of it.
And the verbs, too. Like you mentioned prevention and optimization.
Exactly. Virtuous-sounding verbs. Prevention sounds good, like preventing illness. But its flip side is absence. Preventing autism means ensuring certain people are absent.
Not born.
Right. And optimization. It sounds like making things better for people now. But the critique argues its hidden target is perfection in the future population, optimizing the gene pool, essentially.
So the violence isn't immediate or physical. It's procedural. It's built into the grant proposals, the algorithms, the predictive models that try to tell us who we will be before we are. Control moves upstream.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic maneuver. Compassion itself gets formatted into grant language that serves a different, colder logic. The critique's diagnosis is stark. Atrocity learns to speak future tense, using clean data, not messy reality.
Okay, moving from the language to the money. The source uses that parable. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Applying that to the NIH budget for ADSI. What confession does the funding reveal?
It reveals, according to this reading, an obsession. The money flows towards explanation, prediction, and control. It funds the hunt for the neat biological cause, the solvable equation behind autism.
So let's list the treasures then. What the ADSI funds heavily is: cause, data, prediction, control.
Right. That's the argument. But just as revealing is what's not treasured, what the budget leaves out.
Why untreasured things? Like what?
Well, the analysis points out there are no major funding streams for understanding things that resist easy measurement. Things like autonomy expressed through withdrawal, or the richness of a sensory life that feels the world in floods, or, forms of relation that transcend speech.
Why are those considered, quote, unprofitable?
Because they don't fit the model. They can't easily be turned into data points, into biomarkers. They resist the economy of explanation. If you can't quantify it and use it for prediction, the system effectively deems it irrelevant noise, not part of the problem to be solved.
That reframing is, it's intense. It positions the science not as pure curiosity, but as seeking leverage. And this impulse, this rational mercy to make difference optional, it has a history, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The critique traces a direct line. From Mendel organizing his P's, to Galton turning traits into math, to Pearson developing statistical tools that could rank human populations, it's the lineage of prediction as control.
And the analysis makes a really stark comparison here, linking this modern statistical approach to Aktion T4.
Yes. It's a shocking comparison, but deliberate. T4, the Nazi program that systematically murdered disabled people, is presented not as some demonic outlier, but as the logical endpoint of bureaucratic rationality. It was, in their chilling phrase, administration.
Just paperwork, procedures, making killing efficient.
Exactly. And the argument is that this control structure hasn't vanished, it's learned to speak the language of freedom and choice. Think about prenatal screening. It's offered as information autonomy.
Autonomy through knowledge.
Right. But the critique argues that the moment you have the knowledge of the cause or the risk percentage, the life becomes optional. The choice is presented, but it's already heavily weighted by the predictive framework. The model implicitly tells you what the right outcome is.
So the tools change from ledgers to spreadsheets, from forms to algorithms. But the underlying dream of a predictable, controllable, normalized population persists. A world without outliers.
That's the core argument. The empire of cause is still aiming for that final calibration, a future purged of variance.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of how the ADSI itself, according to this critique, performs this erasure. The source breaks down its four main aims: integration, generation, analysis, validation. It calls them a compass of absence.
Yeah, the cartography of absence. Each aim, though scientifically standard, is interpreted as a step towards dissolving the individual into data, making absence possible.
Let's take the first one, integration without encounter. What does that mean?
It's about merging these huge impersonal data sets, genomics from here, behavioral scores from there. The actual person, the lived experience, gets lost. It's integration of data points, not integration of people. Only the statistical average, the mean, remains. The source calls it dissection disguised as union.
Okay, then the second aim, generation without consent.
This is about mining existing data, taking old records, quantifying past lives, and using that to build new predictive models. The people whose lives generated that data originally, they have no say in how their quantified past is used to predict and potentially preempt future lives. It's called the colonization of memory itself.
So my data from years ago could be used to build a model that flags someone similar to me as at risk in the future.
That's the idea, which leads to the third aim. Analysis without meaning. This is critical. In the statistical models, variation from the norm, like an autistic person's unique gesture or a different processing speed, is often treated as noise.
Just an error in the data.
Exactly. It's not seen as potentially meaningful, as a different kind of signal or syntax. It's just static that needs to be filtered out to improve the model's predictive power. Correlation hunting replaces any attempt at genuine understanding or communion.
Because the goal isn't understanding, it's prediction. Which brings us to number 4, validation without value.
Right. Validation here means making the machine consistent. Does the model reliably produce the same result? It's about reproducibility of the reduction. Success isn't measured by whether the model accurately reflects the value or complexity of a human life, but whether the statistical process is sound. It's validation of the tool, not the person. The source calls it a formal denial of worth.
So putting it all together, the system is precision engineered to quantify, to measure, and to effectively ignore anything that can't be counted. It's not trying to understand difference. It's trying to refine the methods for its disappearance.
Disappearance by other means. And this process, the critique argues, leads down a specific path, a kind of moral cascade.
Okay, walk us through that cascade.
Yeah.
How does scientific knowing slide into social deciding?
It starts with identification. To identify a trait scientifically is to delimit it. You draw a boundary around it, quantify it, categorize it.
Makes sense. Once you've defined it, you can measure it, predict it.
Exactly. So to delimit enables prediction. To predict risk based on that category then justifies intervention. It justifies preemption.
Deciding who gets to arrive.
Yes. To predict becomes the rationale to preempt. And the final step, the quiet conclusion, is that to preempt is ultimately to eliminate.
And this elimination, it doesn't require jackboots or anything overt. It just needs momentum, bureaucracy, clean numbers.
Precisely. No malice is required, the source says. Just the smooth functioning of the system. The decision happens privately, clinically. It's wrapped in the language of informed consent, maybe presented as a simple risk percentage on a screen.
It connects to that power threat meaning framework idea, doesn't it? Define autism as a threat to normalcy, resources, whatever, and then the control measures seen.
Benevolent, protective, necessary. It reframes potential elimination as care.
So if the whole system, is argued here, is geared towards disappearance, where does resistance come in? The analysis pivots quite dramatically here.
It does. It pivots to something really fundamental. The simple, stubborn insistence of the body that continues to exist after being declared optional.
Just continuing to be.
That's the heart of it. Ontological refusal. The critique argues that autism isn't an error needing fixing or elimination. It's simply one of the many ways matter thinks itself into coherence. Resistance is inherent in that existence.
It's found in the lived experience that defies the neat categories, the counter-science of perception.
Exactly. The amplification, the sensory floods, maybe experiencing language as color. Things the models dismiss as noise are actually the texture of being. The resistance is asserting that this experience is irreducible. It doesn't need to be validated by the system's metrics.
It's not about asking for inclusion into their framework.
No. The source is clear. Inclusion is merely permission to remain conditional. The resistance is deeper. It's simply being, refusing to be optional, demanding existence on its own terms, outside the predictive model.
Which brings us back to the beginning.
Yeah.
The treasure reveals the heart, the focus on cause, prediction, control. It's stamped with the likeness of absence.
What a society chooses to fund, what it prioritizes knowing, tells you everything about what it's willing to erase in the name of progress or efficiency. The search for origins in this light looks less like discovery and more like a harvest.
A harvest at the margins.
Burning away possibility rather than nurturing it.
It leaves us, and you listening, with a really unsettling question. When our scientific light of discovery is aimed primarily at managing, predicting, and potentially negating human difference, what kind of society are we actually building?
Are we seeking knowledge to truly understand and accommodate the breadth of human experience, or are we just refining tools for control, tools to shape a future population that fits neatly within our current models?
A future, as the analysis hauntingly concludes, where we were never born. A sobering thought to end on.